Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I'm your host, DelSheree Gladden. I'm a ninth grade English teacher and the author of over 30 published novels. And on this week's episode, we're going to be looking at a middle grade book with a very relevant topic. I'm really excited to talk to J.E. Thomas about the AI incident. J.E., go ahead and introduce yourself.
I will. Thank you again for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm J.E. Thomas. I wrote 2 middle grade novels that were both set in the Park Hill neighborhood of Denver, Colorado, which is an area I'm familiar with because I was born and raised in Denver, and I've lived here all my life. My first book, Control Freaks, follows the exploits of a group of unusually competitive middle schoolers at a fictional school called Benjamin Banneker College Prep, who all want to win the newly announced Golden Steens Trophy. And my second book, which is what we're talking about today, comes out July 8th. It's called The AI Incident, and it's about a battle of wits between 12-year-old Malcolm Montgomery, the unluckiest kid in Colorado foster care, and an autonomous AI-powered robot called Francis. And Francis stands for Forensically Reimagined Anticipatory Nano-Cerebral Integrated System.
Thank you for that. This is obviously a topic that's in most people's news feeds and conversations and daily lives at this point, whether we realize it or not, dealing with AI. So I can see where that side of the inspiration came from. I think a lot of us have thoughts of like, what can it do? What might it take over? Do we need to prepare for world domination? Or is it just going to be, making our hamburgers pretty soon in the future? It's hard to tell at this point.
Isn't it though? It's every day. It seems like it could be something different. Yeah, I had a lot of fun imagining this and looking at it from both the perspective of students, of kids, but also of teachers.
Well, and that's me being a teacher myself and dealing with students and their sometimes lack of motivation to do their own work and wanting to use AI instead. It's kind of this funny back and forth of like, I use AI all the time for work. Like it's super helpful in creating quizzes and putting together formal lesson plans and just like, okay, what else can I do to differentiate this for my gifted students or whatever? I find it like extremely helpful. It saves me a ton of time in my teaching career. But when it comes to my students, I'm like, don't you dare touch it because you don't know how to use it responsibly. Obviously, none of those words are in your vocabulary, so you didn't write this. And I run my classroom largely pen and paper because I teach ninth grade and they just aren't to that point of like being able to interact with AI in a responsible manner that doesn't just lead to cheating on everything. And hopefully as they get a little older, that will improve because it can be a useful tool, but you do have to be responsible with it and think about what is it giving you? Is it accurate? Should I trust this? What additional steps do I need to take? And so far with my students, they're not quite there yet.
I agree. I really wanted to address those points. And I also wanted to raise awareness of the difference between a quote-unquote AI friend and a human friend, because it's so easy to log on to a platform and type in, I need a friend, and have whatever AI system you're using reply back, I'm your friend, and click. Just like that, you have a friend, versus the intricacies of building friendships with human beings. And so I did want to show that it takes some time to develop friendships with people, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's a really relevant thing to think about because, I've seen things in the news stories of like mental health services being provided by AI chatbots. And hopefully most of us are like, well, obviously that's not going to replace full human counseling. But it is interesting because it's like, well, could that be beneficial? Could it present problems that we're not fully anticipating yet? Can that be isolating, which is something that most kids already struggle with everything exhausting being online and social media, and even kids, like, you play games, but you do it in your own separate rooms on your consoles across town or whatever. Like, you're not interacting in the same way. And that's so much of kids' lives anymore, are these online interactions that really limits their social skill development and just their communication skills, to be honest.
Yes, because there's so many things that aren't required of you if you are dealing with a computer. So things as basic as eye contact or the ebb and flow of a conversation where you pause to let someone else speak and they pause and you listen to each other. A lot of that is not something that happens with a computer. And again, that was something that I wanted to show without it being preachy, but just there is a difference, and that ultimately an AI, no matter how nice its name is, which is why I wanted to cobble together some words that would spell a name like Francis, but no matter how nice that name is, it's still a machine, and it's conducting math, really, to decide what is the next word that I should say to get the reaction that I want. I did want to do that. There are points in the book where Francis will just gurgle out emotions, fury and indignation, and glee and happiness, without really understanding what those emotions mean because it's never felt them.
Well, and there's so much that if you aren't the one experiencing something, even for humans, it's challenging to understand. Like, you can try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, you can read, you can watch movies, but even though a lot of those can help you develop a lot of empathy and compassion by understanding situations, even for humans, it's really hard to fully understand something when you haven't experienced it yourself. But we have similar things. Maybe we haven't lost a parent, but we've lost an elderly grandpa or a cousin or something. So we can kind of equate what experiences we've had to relate to someone else. And you think, and AI, there's no way to really make that same comparison. Like, it can take in books and language about stories dealing with a certain thing, but it has nothing to bring that back to as far as like a personal experience, because it just can't.
Right. When I talk with kids, I try to give examples of things like, I'll ask the question, how many of you have ever skinned a knee or had a paper cut? And hands go up because almost everybody has had that experience. You can then type into an AI application, of which there are many. That's another point that I wanted to make in the book. We use the term AI as though it's just one company or one being or one entity or whatever, but there are actually a lot of different companies out there doing AI, all of which might be trained in a slightly different way or programmed to achieve different goals. So they're different. But you could, going back to that example, you can type into an AI, describe a skinned knee, and it can pull from what hundreds or thousands of other people have written about the experience of skinning a knee, but it has never had that, and it can never tap into something that it has actually experienced that might be relevant. And that's one of those big differences.
Well, and it's interesting because in the story you have Malcolm, and he is kind of particularly susceptible, I guess, to being drawn into a relationship with Francis. So tell us a little bit about Malcolm and just kind of where he's at when the story starts and why he gets drawn in to this AI friend a little bit more than maybe some of the other kids do.
I really like Malcolm as a character. He's 12. He lost his parents when he was a baby. They were in a car accident, so he never knew them. He's been in foster care his entire life because he doesn't have any other relatives, and he's never been adopted. He's been shuffled from foster home to foster home or group home. And he does what I think a lot of people do. What I often do is when circumstances are not going the way you want externally, you internalize that and say, well, it must be something about me. So Malcolm has decided that it's his fault that he hasn't, and I'm making quote marks here, earned a family yet. So he makes a checklist of all of the things that he thinks if he accomplishes and becomes the perfect kid, then he'll find his forever home. And he, as the story begins, he's moved to a new school because he has yet another foster parent. And he's trying to complete his checklist because he's also done his research and he's figured out that it will take about 6 months to complete the adoption paperwork. And once he turns 13, he'll get sent to the teen unit. And from his life experiences, nobody in teen unit ever gets adopted. So he's given himself 6 months to find a perfect foster family who will then adopt him. So there's a ticking clock for Malcolm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I noticed in your acknowledgments that you, let me check, I believe the name was, you thank Sherry for her time in helping you learn more about the foster system and children's services in Colorado. So kind of the other part of the inspiration, aside from AI being, just everywhere right now, what led you toward developing Malcolm's backstory as a young boy in the foster care system?
Part of it was my dad was raised in what's called kin care. So he didn't live with his parents. He lived with an aunt and uncle, and that was a very nurturing, positive experience for him. But it was also one that impacted him psychologically as a child, as a young man, and throughout his life. It led him to do, I think, about 20 years of research on his family of origin and finding everybody he could possibly find. So I understood how it can be emotionally challenging if you don't feel like you fit somewhere. That was one aspect. I'd also read quite a bit on what was called the crisis of loneliness while I was doing preliminary research for the book about how kids just are having a harder and harder time connecting with each other and how that sends them adrift in the world. Then talking with Sherry and others about the foster care system just helped me come up with the different components of Malcolm.
Man, it's always so wonderful when you find people who are willing to help you with that research. I've found that
Yes.
most people usually are, if they're not overloaded or just don't have the time. Like most people really enjoy telling people about what they do and what it's really like and
Yes.
breaking through some of those media created ideas or stereotypes sometimes.
Yes, exactly. I agree. And I also wanted, one of the big themes in the book is loneliness. And I wanted to show how that impacts people differently because all of the characters in one way or another are dealing with their own version of loneliness. Malcolm's foster mother, Mrs. Betty, is lonely and isn't sure how to connect. His possible friend, no spoilers there, Tank, is lonely because nobody understands why he's doing so many hours of work with the school aquariums. I think that an emotion as significant as loneliness affects everything. It affects how we walk and talk and just pass through the world. It affects how we breathe when we walk into a room. And I just wanted to explore that.
Well, I think you put it in such a way that young readers, which this is middle grade, so geared toward young readers, but I think very accessible and enjoyable for older readers as well. I had a lot of fun reading it. It really puts that theme into a context that's very relatable and understandable. Even if not all of us have experience with the foster care system, but we've all had experiences of not fitting in a certain place or going somewhere new and not knowing how to relate to the group or anything of that nature, starting a new job and not knowing who to talk to or how to talk to, or just being like, oh, this is just so awkward and weird. We've all had those.
Who do I sit with at lunch. It's the same as she was
Right.
in middle school. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, adults face those situations all the time, which I think kids don't really believe, and they feel like they're alone in some of these early experiences. It's like, unfortunately, a lot of those
Mhm.
carry on throughout your life, and you keep facing them. But
This is
you give
very
this
true.
variety between the characters of how everyone is dealing with their own personal sense of loneliness. And I really enjoyed that gave a wider perspective, because you have Malcolm and he's the focus, but then you also get these other looks at what that feels like and how that can either continue to isolate people and push each other away, or it can be that common ground to bring people together and say, hey, yeah, some of these things kind of suck, but we can help each other get through it. And I
Yes.
really enjoyed that was a focus as well of that coming together aspect.
Thank you. Thank you. Even some of the characters we see on the sidelines, like Mr. Cohen had a bigger part in the first book, but just someone who's older and living alone is still able to find a family. I did want to show people coming together. I just felt like that was an important message to put out there.
I think especially post-pandemic, I think that's something that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are still struggling to find those connections again.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things disappeared. Groups that
Yes.
were active, online options that have gone away, where it's like, oh, we don't need to meet on Zoom anymore. We can go back to being in person. It's like, which is great because you want to be in person.
Yes.
But
Yes.
for people who still aren't able to attend in person, some of those connections get lost when those options aren't there anymore. I think it's been an interesting thing to see what has lingered after the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
and how that sense of loneliness that was already there, I think, because of online environments and social media and everything, that
Yeah.
it hasn't been this like, okay, pandemic's over, we can all bounce back and go back to our normal lives and interact and do all the things that we used to do. Because it really profoundly changed the world in so many ways that I think we're still trying to figure out and understand.
Exactly. It's like getting tossed into the pool for the first time without your water wings,
Mm.
and you flounder until you figure it out. And that, I think, is what's happening, where we're no longer isolated, but we have to relearn, how do you interact with other people? And
Hmm.
that's something, particularly for kids who, depending on their age, are learning this for the first time in third or fourth grade. And that's really something. Or for adolescents who went from middle school to high school without actually interacting with each other that much.
Yeah. It was my first year of teaching public high school. It was that group of kids that were end of elementary, early middle school during the pandemic. And their lack of social skills and communication skills and just their ability to regulate their own emotions
Yeah.
were shocking. Like, so many behavior problems. Like, teachers who'd been there for 30 years were like, this is the worst I have ever experienced. And it has been improving, thankfully, but that is such a critical time in kids' lives. And if you don't have that support and the modeling of other people
Yes.
to show you,
Yeah.
like, okay, no, we don't need to handle things like this. Here's some coping mechanisms. Here's some skills. This is how we talk through conflict and things like that. And with this in the book, where you've got human examples and then you've got an AI example, it really makes the point of this is not the same kind of thing. Like, an AI can have all the knowledge in the world, but it can't actually experience all of these human things to give you advice in a sense of like how you deal with emotions or
Mhm.
stress, or it can give you a checklist of things like try this, try this, try this. But having those friends and support systems and mentors to help you learn and
Mhm.
grow in those skills, it's something that can't be replicated. Maybe some people may say not yet, but I don't think that's ever something that AI is going to be able to do realistically.
Yeah, and at that point, is it AI? So I love science
Hmm.
fiction, And so I'm just taking a little leap there. But if it gets to the point that it has emotions, it has somehow learned to experience emotions, is it AI anymore, or is it something else? And those are big questions that I think as humanity we're going to have to figure out probably sooner rather than later.
Hopefully so. There's a lot of questions around AI and its
Aren't
development that
there?
I'm like, could we decide on some stuff and understand things a little bit better? There's a lot of questions hanging out there in the void right now.
Well, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is when I started working on this book, the idea of an AI-powered robot coming in and replacing teachers was the stuff of imagination, right? And then I think my editor sent me the final proof on the same day that I saw an announcement about school that had been approved by the Charter Commission, I think, Charter School Commission in Arizona that had, and I hope I could be misspeaking all of the details, and apologies if so, but I believe what it was students would have 2 hours of AI-led instruction to cover academics, and then the rest of the day they would have guides who perhaps used to be called teachers, but I don't believe they required certification, who would help them with things like entrepreneurship and public speaking. And so I emailed my editor and said, "Look, this is just what we were dreaming about a few months ago." And I don't mean dreaming in a positive sense, but this is what we imagined, and now look where we are.
Yeah, it's really, that'll be interesting to see and follow. I'll have to look that up and kind of keep an eye on it. But because anyone who has been in a classroom, whether it's pre-K up through higher education, the knowledge of the content is really a small part of the teaching process.
Yes.
Which is so fascinating, trying to figure that out when you're in there and in your first couple of years where you're just like, what's happening? But like, there's so much that's, classroom management. That's how you present the information. Is it engaging? Is it something that they're going to sleep through? Are they up and moving? Do they have brain breaks in between chunks of content? Is it just throw as much information as possible at them until it overloads them and hopefully, 10% of it sinks in? Just having all the information is not teaching.
Yes, exactly. And that was something else with Francis. Its job was to improve standardized test scores. And if that meant just having the kids memorize the answers, okay, because the goal was to improve the standardized test scores, versus the human teachers in the book who were helping kids think. They didn't tell them what to think, they taught them how to think. And that, I think, is a huge, huge differentiation.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something I've noticed with my students is that their ability to critically think stops short at a certain point where it's like, okay, they can read something, they can summarize it, they can answer questions about it that are, asking for details. But then it's like, okay, now you need to take all that information and apply it to a different situation. How does that information influence what you would do or how you would interpret this or whatever? And then it's like deer in the headlight. It's like, wait, what? Now I have to use it? Now I'm not just regurgitating the information back to you. And it's like, well, that's good to make sure that you comprehend it and that you can read it and find the details and answer the questions. But what's really the point of that if then you can't actually put it to use in another form? And that's, I think, where relying on test-taking skills or just, do the practice test enough that then you do better. It's like, okay, fine, that bumps the score, but what was the point when it comes to each student's actual life and what they're learning? Is this helpful in any way? And I think that's a battle in a lot of school districts around the country.
Well, and it's so interesting that you mention that because I agree fully. And I know when I speak with students, I look for real world examples that are applicable. And One is, well, let's say you are getting your appendix out and your doctor scored extremely well on the test because she used AI to answer all the tests. So, yay, she's got a wonderful theoretical knowledge of surgery, but has no idea of how to apply that knowledge. And if you are on the operating table, you kind of want somebody who can figure things out and who can adjust if situations change without relying on a computer that may have gone down that day or that minute or that hour. So yeah, those are such good examples.
Well, and I think that this is one that, as kids and adults read this, gets a lot of what if questions and thinking about your own role in the future of, how is this going to be used? And that was something I really enjoyed about it. And I hate to start wrapping up this conversation because I really enjoy talking about all of this. But I do have a 30-minute time limit on the show. So we do have to start wrapping up, and I'm so sorry about that. But before we do, what do you have planned coming up, and where can people find you and stay on top of what you're doing? Because I think people will definitely want to keep up on your projects.
Well, thank you so much. I am working on an adult cozy sci-fi, kind of like a cozy mystery, but it's cozy science fiction, as well as an audio drama. And then yesterday, I got an idea for another middle grade novel. So at some point, I would love to talk to you about how you wrote 30 books, because I'm like, I don't know, a squirrel running from this project to that one.
I've always got 4 or 5 projects going at the same time. So
do you
I get
really?
That. Yeah.
I do hope at some point you do a program where you talk about how you manage that, because that would be hugely helpful for me.
It's in my mind. As soon as I get some time to focus on that, trying to get back to things this summer.
Thank you, Dan, for giving me another thing to do. And in terms of finding me, I am online. My website is jethomasauthor.com, and that is my Instagram handle as well. I am sporadically on social media. That's the only one, really, that and Blue Sky, and I'm not great at it, actually. I'm inconsistent. Let's use that word.
That's been me lately too. I'm like, one of those things on the list of like, one day I'll get more engaged with all of that. But, it's what it is. Well, and I did want to mention, on your website, you do have in your contact section, if people would like you to come to their school or library or some other speaking engagement, you do have contact information there on your website. For people to reach out and set that up. And I think kids would have so much fun. If I taught middle grade, I would be arranging that.
Well, thank you. And shameless plug, but I also do talks for high schoolers, particularly those who are interested in writing, because one of the things I've noticed is there's a huge pull toward things like graphic novels and song lyrics. And so one of the sessions I'll do is work with them on, let's take one of the chapters or the first third of one of my books and look at it as a graphic novel. What aspects do you keep? What are you not able to use in this new format? Because I think that increases reading comprehension and confidence in writing and reaches the kids where they are.
Oh, that's a really fun idea. I like that. Very cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and for sharing your book. I really enjoyed it, and this has been a wonderful chat, so I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.